Welcome back to the channel, Bridging the Gap, Student to Engineer, where STEM professionals provide advice to students. This video was a request. It is a deep dive into a series of schools rather than one school, simply because the University of Massachusetts locations do not provide very much data. So I thought I would just look into all of them and put them in one video. Okay, if we look at each of the locations, you can see that Lowell has by far the most ABET accredited programs. They range from the core engineering disciplines to some engineering tech programs, a nuclear focus within chemical engineering, and then a specialty in plastics engineering. If we go over to Amherst, you're really looking at 7 different options, mostly core engineering disciplines with biomedical that is typically not considered core, but is something that is popular in the area. And then as we go to Dartmouth, it is just 5 majors, again, reducing a little bit, and then Boston just with computer and electrical. So if you're looking for a UMass campus, that has a lot of options for you and you want to be able to move around between different majors, Lowell is the place to go, although Amherst also has a variety of options. But just after understanding what's available at each campus, let's just get into the data that they do provide. So I pulled up the reports for each of the locations and we'll go through them one by one. So starting with UMass Lowell, the undergrad career outcomes report. This is for the entire school, not just for engineering. But if we look at the overall university snapshot, 93% of grads are working or continuing their education. And the average salary is a really healthy $85,000 a year. But if we look at where the grads go, I think this is quite good information to have. Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and New York are pretty close to the school. The school is in Massachusetts. Virginia is a little bit further away, and then California is definitely on the other side. So for the top 5 states to be beyond just the immediate geographical area is nice to see. It just indicates that if you do go to UMass Lowell, going and getting a job elsewhere out of state is not only available to you, but also happens to a lot of other grads. All right, so let's go over to the Francis College of Engineering page. What we see is 93.7% of grads are working or continuing their education. That is a really good number. Definitely on par with the best engineering schools across the country. For 33% of the students continuing their education is a pretty big number compared to a lot of other schools. But if you look at that information by major, what you see is a very high percent of the biomedical engineering students and plastics engineering students are continuing their education, which may skew that. And if we look through the other ones, some of them are definitely on par with what we see at other places. But if you are looking at going into biomedical engineering or plastics engineering, just be aware that it is pretty prevalent for students to immediately go into grad school. And so that may be something that you should be prepared for. And if you are planning on doing that already, then you may just be on the exact right place for that. All right, so let's just go on to the next thing. So a 74% knowledge rate means that they had information from 74% of their grads. So it is nice that they get a large number, so we can confirm that that is indicative of the graduating class overall, but not anything that I would use to measure the school against. Average starting salary being $78,000 is around what we typically see in graduating classes across the country, so on par. So let's dig into the success rate for each of the majors. Typically, we like to just keep things up at the high level, but with this one, knowing that the overall rate of positive outcomes is about 94%, I think it is worth digging into since we have the information. Quite a number of these majors have 100% positive student outcome rates, which is what you want at a school. You want to go to a place where you're pretty much know you're going to come out and be successful. Computer engineering and chemical engineering below that 90% threshold that I would really like to see as we look at schools. Now, understanding that this data is from 2024, which is when there were a lot of disturbance in the industry in computers, computer engineering, computer science. An 85% placement rate or positive outcome rate for computer engineering is actually not really surprising, and hopefully that will go up. But if you are looking at a tight market with lots of people interested in it, you might look either outside of that major or at another location besides UMass Lowell. All right, but if you look overall, there are so many majors with really high placement rates or positive student outcome rates. So I would say this is a really good option if you are looking at engineering schools. I will comment just on the average salary. I see that they don't have very many reported. Typically that is because they don't have enough data to display that information without revealing personal information. One thing that may indicate is that these are really small schools or really small graduating classes. So if you are concerned about being in a large class or a small class, definitely ask questions of this school before committing. But all of these average salaries are good and a good indication that students are successful when they get out of school. The next thing we're going to look at is UMass Amherst. Amherst has information available. They actually do use the NACE First Destination Survey, which is the survey that we really like to use when we're looking at schools. The unfortunate part about it is they do not divide it out by class or school within the college. So we don't know if this is engineering or not. But if we just look at what we have, this is 2025 data. The last one was 2024 data, so something to be aware of. But 88% positive student outcome rates, that is a little bit lower than the other school. It's actually about 5% lower. So something to be aware of as you're going in is that the positive student outcome rates are 5% lower. The next thing to look at is what employers and what industries hire from UMass Amherst. So given that this is not just engineering, we're just guessing about some of this information, but if 15% of the grads are going into healthcare, there is a possibility that there are some engineers there, but the construction and manufacturing are the two on this top 10 list that are most likely for first destinations for engineers. Although at some schools, there are quite a number of engineers that are going into financial services. And so if you are someone who is interested in getting an engineering degree, but also interested in financial services industry, this school may be a great place for you to go because it'll be an easier path to get you to financial services from engineering. A few last things to point out before we move on to the next location for UMass. So we talked about the 88% undergrads that have positive student outcome rates. That's based on the school knowing a lot about their class, which is great. But if we look at the number of different states and the number of different countries they're working in post-graduation, you can see that they are very spread out, not just across the US, but also into different countries. Next school we're going to look at is UMass Dartmouth. 89% positive student outcome rate. That is pretty much on par with Amherst. Again, not able to dive into the engineering school versus the other schools, but definitely on par with the last one we looked at overall for the school. So the next section is major employers. Like the Amherst location, Dartmouth grads heavily go into healthcare, but there are some companies on here that are 100% more technology focused. So NAVSE warfare centers are going to be pretty heavy into hiring engineers, as well as Dell Technologies. And then similar to the last one, we're talking about financial services. We got Fidelity in here, and Fidelity and other financial services sector companies are hiring more engineers than they did in the past because they like the way that engineers are trained, a logical brain, solving problems and those types of things. Okay, and then if we look at top sectors, definitely architecture and engineering occupations, and transportation and material moving occupations. Those are going to be where the engineering grads are primarily going to, but it is nice to see that engineering focused employment sectors are featured highly on here. And then just one thing to look at and compare to the other two that we looked at, the regional employment, while the other locations for UMass did not say what percent were outside of Massachusetts and outside of New England, there were a very high number of different places they went, where the way that this is being presented at least indicates that quite a number of grads and a high percent of grads are staying in Massachusetts or staying regionally. The last one we're going to look at is UMass Boston. This was the location with the fewest number of ABET accredited options for majors. The limited information that the school provides is along those lines. So anything related to engineering does not appear in the top 5 bachelor's awarded, although computer science is top 5 masters. So there is an IT, computer, and business focus in the master's area in UMass Boston, but we're not seeing it at all in undergrad. Other than that, UMass Boston does not provide a lot of information or any other information that we can use to suggest or recommend the school or not. That is all the information that UMass locations provide. You can see that it is quite limited and hard for us to just go out and wholeheartedly recommend any of these locations, but I hope that this review helped you a little bit, and that you know a little bit more about what questions you can ask when you go visit the schools. But I will provide the links to all of the information that we looked through so that you can go dig into the information that is available and see if you can get anything more out of it. If you do have any questions or would like to have reviews of any other schools, please leave a comment below and we will get back to you.